Previously, I added the bones of a combat system. Since then, I've expanded the system and added more gameplay features. One of the critical mistakes I made in the first combat casino was that the combat system was entirely randomized. This method was inspired by dungeon reels, which I played heavily in the months before I started making my own games. The mistake here wasn't actually in the randomization, but rather the fact that I included elemental damage bonuses and resistances. On their own, each of these aren't that big of a deal, and there's nothing wrong with having them, but when your attack, and thus the element you use, is randomized, it quickly becomes frustrating. To solve this, I simply removed all the elemental damage bonuses from my game. Speaking of randomization, this week I added the slot machine's bones to the game, starting with the center wheel. As previously mentioned, the center wheel determines your attack and the associated attack animations. Right now the wheel only has one possible attack, but I set the system up to take an array of attacks, so it should be easy to adapt it to whatever system I make to feed into it. Next I added two more reels. The right one is a multiplier that determines the speed of your attack on the bar, as well as the base damage of that attack. Faster movement equals higher difficulty equals higher damage. The left reel will contain a list of elements. Hang on, you say. I thought you just said that you removed all the elemental bonuses. My intrepid viewer, you're correct. I removed the bonuses. These elements are actually a secondary damaging attack with potential for status effects. In the example here, you can see that the fire allows the player to damage multiple enemies without sacrificing their primary damage source. Leave a comment below if you have any ideas about what other elements or status effects I could use. Along the way, I made some changes to the font's shadow, which makes it stick out a little less than before, as well as adjusted the collision detection on all the enemies so they only collide if their hitboxes collide, instead of the representation sprite above them. This helps the movement feel a little less chunky. During the creation of this video, I watched the action button review of the Final Fantasy VII Remake. Tim said two things in particular that really stuck with me. The first one:
we didn't want to just play games, we wanted to hang out in them.
Resonated with me because as a child, I spent a disproportionate amount of time hanging out in games like Pokemon Silver or Animal Crossing, simply talking to the NPCs and walking around. As I grew older, the games I hung out in transitioned into Harvest Moon, Animal Crossing Inside My Pocket, and various MMOs. In particular, I gravitated towards any game that had a dedicated social hub. Games like All Points Bulletin with its social district or Global Agenda with its main hub. I believe that this anecdote illustrates strongly that having a world the player wants to just exist in is critical for long-term enjoyment and memories that last longer than the time it takes to take a dump. The second point:
to make one slice of pizza, you have to make a whole pizza and then cut it.
Is a wonderful thing to internalize if you're thinking about making a game. There's no such thing as a vertical slice. Every system I built for this prototype has been created with the assumption that it will be expanded upon in the future. A better way to think about a vertical slice is that it's actually just the skeleton of your game with enough meat hanging off of it in the right places to give the illusion that it's a full game. A majority of the work done this week was invisible. There was a lot of time spent thinking about the structure of my code, and unfortunately cleaning up code doesn't really make for good video. But equally important to writing code is analyzing and dissecting other people's art. You can't be creative in a vacuum. What isn't invisible is the rest of the slot machine's UI elements. These are all placeholders for now, but you get the idea. Additionally, I put the base of a loot mechanic in. Right now you can only earn these baubles, or whatever they are. I'm calling them tokens for now. I built a static data holder class to store these until I figure out a better system, or I just decide that I like this one enough to continue with it. Following this, there's a new battle ending state for when you beat everyone. Right now it does nothing except tell you that you won, but in the future there might be some sort of calculation done here, possibly XP, possibly VI perk XP from the first game. Speaking of perks, I just added 2 new perks to my Patreon. Now if you support me, you get a special rank on my Discord. Alright, well now you can beat the prototype, but what about a main menu? I think it's finally time to... I first implemented a default class in the static player data holder that points to a prefab using the resources system. Then I just made a new scene, split the battle state manager into a new base, and made a child manager. Check it out. Main menu. I want to give an absolutely massive shout out to Taro Dev? I'm not entirely sure. These tutorials have taught me so much about async, await, and various other small things that have helped me massively. Go check him out. If you're learning Unity, he's super helpful. In the meantime, I hooked the ending state of the battle up to the main menu, and now the whole thing loops endlessly. Technically, you can build and run this now. It's a full, albeit short, game. I made a lot of progress this week, and I think I'm almost at a point where I can upload this and you could download it at home. For now though, I think I'm going to take a break, so I'll see you in the next video.